Good morning, everyone. It looks like we've got folks that are joining us. We'll wait another couple of minutes to have all of our folks join us. There's Zoe. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm warm in my little basement here, my little basement office. Yeah,
Nice.
what about you? Are you in your apartment?
Yeah, I'm in my apartment. Becca's also here, so the audio is a little bit weird, but
Oh,
yeah, we're
Becca. I
hanging out
know
here, which
Becca.
is nice.
I know Becca. Where is Becca? Is she hiding in the back? There she is. Okay, so you guys don't want to have feedback. All right, I understand. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Um, I appreciate you all jumping on board. We are obviously in virtual mode today. Um, I'm also recording this lecture today so that if anyone for whatever reason is unable to make it, that um, they can watch it. I'll post the recording on Discovery. Also, if you want to go back and review anything that we talked about, I saw Becca there. That that you can do that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about uh, the marketing research process. Okay. Um, but before we do that, I wanted to um, share a little something with you guys that I've been doing a little bit of research on your generation. Okay. And so there was a book that was written a couple of years ago about Gen Z in particular. And for an old dude like me, I'm trying to make sure I really have a good understanding of your world. Um, and so with that, um, I wanted to share with you some of the key points of this book and then just talk about some of these key points for a moment and then have a prayer so that every time we meet, we can touch on some of these, validate for me that, some of these things are challenging for your generation, and then have a little prayer with the intention that we can pray uh, for not only each one of you, but really, um, the younger generations coming up, because you guys probably know better, certainly than I do, the challenges that you all have had to face with COVID and with smart smartphones and all those kinds of things. So let me go ahead and this slide basically shows that 100 years ago there was some sort of ramp up time. If you look at, for example, the radio. Hard to believe, right? But there were, in 1940, there was a certain percentage of the U.S. population that had no awareness, excuse me, that's not correct. They had awareness of radio, but they did not have it in their home, which is kind of surprising, right? And then over time, everyone got a radio in their home. If you fast forward and you look at social media and smartphones, it's like there was no real ramp up time. It was just, on a Monday, social media was born, and on a Tuesday, yeah, I'm exaggerating, but everybody had a Facebook account or whatever, and they all had a smartphone, and that certainly um, drove a lot of the behavior and really your all's worlds. Um, and so that's had, some good effects and maybe not so good effects. So I just want to throw it out there. Do you guys, I mean, help me. I'm like 40 years older than or 35 than a lot of you. I mean, does this sort of resonate with you guys? I don't have any takers out there. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna assume that this is something that's well known in your generation. And again, I'm just trying to understand a little bit more of your world so that I can do a good job of relating and understanding. So let me go ahead and pray, and then we will jump into our material today. Father, I just thank you for this day. Father, I thank you for each young man and young woman here who loves you. Lord, we seek you. And Lord, through um, our understanding of the world, technology, and then specific to this class, Lord, let your word and everything that your Holy Spirit is doing permeate um, what we learn, how we interact, and how we perceive you and perceive the world and treat our fellow um, men and women. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Yeah, so for this, I just wanted to point out, I'm sure this is probably verses that you're very familiar with. Um, but Philippians 6, excuse me, Philippians 4, 6 and 7, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. So that is one of my favorite verses, and I need to, quite frankly, I have to preach it to myself a lot. And so I certainly offer that up to you as a great way to get stay grounded and stay synced up with God and His Holy Spirit. All right, so let's get into the material. Um, I'm sorry, let me backtrack for a sec. Let's make sure, in any questions that you all have about your first mini group project submission. How did that go for you all? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you were like, yeah, I got it. We got it. Our group got it. And it was pretty easy.
Yeah, I would say for our group, it went pretty smooth. It didn't take a whole ton of time, just concentration. So,
Good, 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 good. Thank you, Ellie. Anybody else? I got a chat. Hey, Hannah, thumbs up. Okay, good. Thank you for that, Hannah. All right. Well, quite frankly, I have not reviewed your submissions yet, but I certainly will certainly before Wednesday. Um, so let's talk about the research process. There is a lot of material here. I will go at a fairly fast clip in order that we can get through the majority of these slides. Really, the goal is for you to see sort of a bird's eye view of uh, what is the market research process. And if you had me uh, in Principles of Marketing, that we talked a lot about the fact that marketing is indeed a process. And I personally appreciate that because it allows us to quantify, in many cases, in our understanding of our target audience. The first step is to establish the need for marketing research. Um, I'm going to refer quite a bit to our project with Jennifer McCord and use that as sort of our key example that will be able to help us understand the material. So, in terms of Jennifer McCord establishing the need for marketing research, I think um, based upon what she shared with us last week, there is undoubtedly a need for research, right? We don't have all of the resources that really big schools do to be able to, uh, basically invest millions and millions of dollars in marketing to reach hither and yon uh, to prospective high school students or maybe even transfer students, which I thought that was interesting. She shared with us. So there is indeed a need for marketing research. Secondly, defining the problem. In your first mini group project, you are in some ways sort of defining the problem. Uh, Now, it's sort of the inverse of developing research questions and developing hypotheses. And really, the research questions are indicative of what is the problem. So, in terms of again our Jennifer McCord project, we can think about um, what is the problem. So we could say the problem is because we don't have infinite marketing resources, it is important for us to know with a relative high degree of certainty which are the types of marketing um, media and tools to most effectively reach students who we think should be at Asbury. Okay, that was way too many words, but that's the idea. The idea is creating those research questions, creating the hypotheses are intended to essentially identify clearly for the client, Jennifer McCord, and for ourselves, what is the problem. Okay. And then step three, establish objectives. So we have not gotten to this part of our course yet, but the goal is to essentially determine what types of information do we think we will need in order to answer our research questions. Okay. Research design, several different types of research. We will um, explore these in greater detail throughout the semester. Basically, three types. Number one is exploratory research. Uh, we typically use exploratory research when neither the client nor the consultant really know what the problem is. So, for example, if an organization's sales are falling, we might have some ideas about why sales are falling, but it would be good for us to ask uh, people that are in our target audience how they feel about the organization, what seems to be working, what seems to maybe need improvement. And that exploratory research helps us sort of refine the questions that we ultimately need to ask. Secondly, descriptive research. Now, this is the research that probably many of you have had some familiarity with. So, um, descriptive research at Asbury could be how many uh, juniors are there at Asbury? How many men, how many women, how many from a certain geographic location, how many with a particular major. So descriptive research is basically simply a snapshot of a particular organization or subgroups within an organization. Um, that it's extremely important, but that it's not um, necessarily the most uh, how would I just fascinating, for us to have a lot of data about, and we certainly do, a lot of data about the types of students that we have at Asbury. It's important to know, but it doesn't necessarily, I think, hold a lot of intriguing um, insights for us necessarily. Now, combined with exploratory research and causal research, it can, of course, become very interesting. So, the last category is causal. Um, so, causal research basically says if if I run this type of social media campaign, then I know our enrollment for female students from the Columbus, Ohio area will increase. That was just a hypothetical, right? But that's the idea. Causal research, we're trying to understand what uh, for what stimuli can lead to other responses or actions that people were or organizations were trying to influence. Now we're trying to also, step five, identify information types. Primary research is we create a survey and we collect data that has never, to the best of our knowledge, been collected before in the way that we have collected it. So, primary research would be, again, for our Jennifer McCord project, I want to send a survey to all students who matriculated and entered Asbury in fall of 25 to ask them additional questions around why they chose Asbury. That would be primary information. Now, secondary information is what I've already shared with you. So that was the PowerPoint slide deck that's in Discovery, as well as the data. There's like four or five different columns in Excel of data that I shared in Discovery as well. So the great thing about secondary data is it's readily available. The challenge is that there are likely questions that we would want to ask of the secondary data, but we can't answer those questions because the question was never posed to the respondent or the person answering the question or answering the survey. So, sort of pros and cons for both primary and secondary information. Um, Similar here in step six, methods of accessing data. Secondary data is relatively easy to access. So again, it's the PowerPoint slide deck and the Excel spreadsheet that is in Discovery. That would be secondary data. Primary data is, again, let's go to all students who entered Asbury in fall of 2025 and ask them additional questions beyond what we currently have, which incidentally, just as a sidebar, I think really this is your all's project, but I would like for you to consider that we might want to supplement the data that we currently have on fall 25 with additional or primary data. So I just want to put that seed out there in your mind, if you will, for you to think about, hey, maybe there are some questions that we could ask fall of 25 students that would help us give a more complete answer to Jennifer McCord to help her. Step seven, data collection forms. Um, we're all pretty familiar with questionnaires. Um, what I would say is that let me say it this way, anybody could create a survey, but truly a good survey, a survey that captures data that is both reliable and valid is pretty hard. Um, and we'll touch on some of the reasons for that later in the semester. But I sort of view a really good survey as sort of an art and a science. And hopefully that'll be encouraging to some of you because some of you are decidedly left brain, so very math quantitative oriented, which is great. And then some of you, I would say, are probably more right brained, meaning you may not necessarily gravitate toward math, but you can appreciate art and music and design and aesthetics. And really, both of those skills, both the left and right brain, is super valuable when we're trying to conduct a research project. Another data collection form is a focus group guide. Focus groups are fascinating. They are essentially a sub or a small slice of a target population in which we spend 90 to 120 minutes with that group of people, either in one room or more and more done virtually on Zoom or Teams. And the focus group guide is developed between the researcher and the client in most cases to help try to interview the respondents to get answers to questions that a client is very interested in. Okay. Um, and then thirdly, you probably won't necessarily ever see this in your careers after you graduate, but it's basically ethnography, and it's essentially a researcher goes into, let's say, an office where employees are working for a company or organization. And the researcher basically is sort of a wallflower, and they just observe what's going on, different behaviors, different conversations, different reactions that, um, uh, in that case, employees have to particular stimuli in the environment. So you probably won't see that very much. Um, Designing data collection forms. Um, Most of the surveys that you've probably done, maybe are Google form or maybe Survey Monkey if you've gotten into something a little bit more exotic. Um, I would say if you were going to do some graduate level quantitative research, there are other more sophisticated tools that are out there. One that's very common in academia is called Qualtrics, and you'll see that has some rather sophisticated sort of programming within it that if you were to sort of look at a decision tree, there is programming within the software that says, depending upon how a respondent answers a particular question, the respondent will go down one track of questions. If they answer another way, they go down another track of questions. Um, you probably won't unless you go to grad school, you probably won't have any real interaction with Qualtrics. But if you decide you want to go to grad school, then particularly to get your PhD, you will likely have some familiarity with Qualtrics. This is one of the biggest things that we have to struggle with in step 8 is determining sampling plan and size. So I'm going to take a quick drink here. So those of you that had me for marketing, or excuse me, business analytics, we talked quite a bit about having a sample that is representative of the population. And it's really important for us to, as best we can, get a representative sample so that we can make some declarative kind of statements about the population. So, for example, um, I'm just let's say for fall of 25 at Asbury, let's say there were 400 students. That seems like sort of the top end of the goal that Jennifer shared around what would be a good, excuse me, a good size class entering. Well, we probably are not going to get responses from all 400. So, and it would be fairly time consuming. So, we can be okay with not surveying all 400 of the fall 25. We might be able to get, let's say, 25%. So we survey 100. Um, I would argue, and certainly we could look at other statistical kinds of theorems, that 100 would be indeed a representative sample, assuming that our sample was collected randomly. That should work. And so again, planting that little seed, I think it would be good for us to consider a quantitative survey, and maybe we only get 75, maybe we get 100. I would feel pretty good about um, that sample size for that particular population. Then we go ahead and collect the data. Sometimes there will be errors in collecting the data. For example, um, you may or may not know, but people can sign up to get paid to take surveys. And there are companies out there, research companies, that will maintain what are called panels. And panels are basically databases of people who have opted in to take surveys, and they've been put in different categories based upon age, education, ethnicity, income, geography, and so on. Um, Now, what happens, unfortunately, is that because you get paid, you may or may not really care about answering the questions in a quality manner. You might just say, well, you know what? I get paid $100 to take a survey, so I'm going to just fill in all the little bubbles as fast as I can and get paid as much as I can. Well, it's pretty cool when you get paid that money to speed through those surveys, but from a researcher standpoint, that data is really kind of useless because it's really not giving us the data that we really need. So oftentimes we will have sort of a validation mode where we are sort of cross-checking answers to see if a particular person who took a survey, did they really answer the questions or were they just sort of trying to speed through it and get to the next survey? All right. Of course, once we get the data, we want to analyze it. Um, you guys will do some of this, certainly with even the secondary data that we have, to be able to analyze it and then see if there are any relationships between our independent variables and our dependent variable. Again, those of you that had me for business analytics, um, we had some fun with correlation analysis and with multivariate regression. And so we might would sort of predict that we will be doing the same thing in this class. So you'll be able to take those skills from business analytics and apply them in this marketing research class. And then the final step is developing and delivering a research presentation report. What you will find, and I'm sure you all can appreciate this because for the most part, you have not been researchers, but you've been sort of consumers of research. And most people, I imagine you would all agree, are not super interested in getting down in the weeds of data analysis and statistics, which is okay. However, what we do need to do, and this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is um, those of you that have more of a right brain sort of orientation, we want to take that data and the analysis and turn it into basically a story. And that's sort of how we all learn, right? Once upon a time, there was a prince and a princess, or whatever it was. And for better or worse, that's kind of how we all learn. And so our objective in the reporting is to take the data, the analysis, be truthful, but put it together in a way that is sort of in a narrative that most people can read and listen to and internalize it and make sense of it. So, those of you that are great writers and are very much right-brained in your orientation, this is where you really get a chance to shine. Okay. All right. So let's drill into each one of the problems. Or excuse me, drill into each one of the steps. So hopefully this will be fairly fresh in your mind. I don't necessarily have, I'm not assessing whether your answers are necessarily great or not great at this point. I'm just asking for you all to kind of think about what you did. So, um, Hannah, you were so great to give us a thumbs up here a minute ago. If from your perspective, what do you think could be uh, one of, if not several, of the problems that Jennifer McCord's marketing and enrollment department have? Is Hannah there? She might be on mute.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. All right. So in your first mini group project, okay, your group had to develop research questions, right? So if you sort of step back and you think about what are the problems, one or maybe multiple problems, that you think, in your opinion, Jennifer McCord's department has? Now, I don't mean problem like you're a bad person or there's shame or anything. It's more like solving a math problem. What is their problem?
I would probably say for them, it's just probably a little bit on the understaffed part side, just based on the size of Asbury. I would say there's a lot more information coming in maybe than, people can handle, but also resources. Us being a smaller university means our budget's not nearly as big, especially for, the marketing realm. So I'm sure that's a big issue as well for them.
Yeah, that I think that's excellent, right? When you think about maybe not having as many people, that sort of gets back to our statement a few minutes ago, which is we don't have 1,000-person marketing team at Asbury. So we have to be very selective in what we have the people that we do have, what we have them do, um, because we don't have the luxury of having 1,000 people. So great job. Great job. Anybody else want to, you know, uh, give your perspective on what problems you think Jennifer has?
I
Oh,
would say she briefly mentioned this for a second, but talking about like the fraudulent applications, um,
very
kind of
good.
skewing the
Yeah.
data.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Yep.
Well, I just think that that's a pretty significant problem. It seemed like I guess they had maybe handled it a little bit, but like definitely the data is skewed because of those fraudulent applications.
Yeah, boy, I mean, I love that. That is a great statement. So, um, you can imagine just sort of expanding on that, Lucy Kate. That was excellent. Um, if we combine what you said with what Hannah said, then you can imagine we don't have 1,000 people in marketing. We've got, I don't know, let's, for the sake of argument, let's say 10. I don't know. Maybe it's less than that. So if it's only 10, and a significant percentage of our applications are fraudulent, man, that's a real pain in the rump, right? Because two two problems with that. One, I'm pursuing people that don't exist, and therefore I've wasted time on those fraudulent applications. And the flip side of it is my opportunity cost. I could have been pursuing someone who is a real person and is very interested in learning more about Asbury, but I couldn't get to them because I was chasing these fraudulent applications, right? So great point. Great point. Anybody else? All right. Well, great job, you all. I'm trying to move my little dialogue box here. Uh-oh. Okay. I got lost in Zoom somewhere here. Okay. Rats. To stop. Oh, here we go. Can you guys see my screen still?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I can't see it. I don't know what I did. I did something to my screen here. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what the heck I did. There we go. All right. Wow. Okay. So you guys can see these little semicircles on these slides or this slide.
Not anymore, no.
Not anymore. Okay. That is not cool. Thank you for the feedback, though. All right. Good. All right. Problem solved. Okay. So, shoot, I'm sorry, I'm having Zoom issues here. There we go. All right. So this is sort of a bird's eye view of our steps, and I won't drag you through all of these, but you can sort of see the flow, right? I often use the the analogy of going to the doctor. Most people don't really want to go to the doctor, right? But he or she, this is sort of what they have to do, right? Particularly if you're seeing a new provider, you have to talk about the problem. You have to understand maybe what may be going on, the background. Number three, determine what decisions need to be made. So if you have a stomach ache or headache and a fever, then the doctor, he or she, might decide, well, we need to run some tests. I'm not 100% sure what's going on. And they're not necessarily doing that to be mean. They have some hypotheses or they have some theories that they're either trying to confirm or dispute, right? So they'll say, well, we need to get some additional information. And then once we do that, then I can have a more certain or at least I can increase the likelihood and certainty that I have a good handle on what is the problem going on with you in the case of if you go to the doctor, right? Develop a concise description of the problem. You have COVID, you have the flu, you have a broken arm, what have you, right? So that's what we're trying to do. Again, I would just ask you to sort of toggle back to the problem we're working on with Jennifer to help sort of reframe what it is that we're talking about. All right. Research objective. Um, Here we can see some examples of what could be, you know, uh, what could be certain research objectives. So the problem here in this example, the American Red Cross wishes to increase the number of American university students who donate blood each year. So the research objective could be to determine what college students see as benefits of donating blood. Okay. So again, this is sort of like we're looking at two sides of the same coin. Our objective in this case can be what what do you guys as college students see as the benefit of donating blood? The research question version of that objective is what do college students see as benefits of donating blood, right? Um, you know, you might say, well, the question on the right basically is the statement on the left, except I've got, who, what, when, where, why on the left-hand side, and I put a question mark at the other end, right? Um, So, so sorry about that. I'm checking my text here from somebody. Sorry about that. Um, all right. So now we're sort of getting into, and you guys did some of this already in your first group project, began to develop some hypotheses. And then um, I won't spend a ton of time on the notion of constructs, but a construct, as you can see here on the slide, is basically an abstract idea or a concept. So we might have a hypothesis. Let me see if maybe this is helpful. Let's say I have a hypothesis that says having quick service at a restaurant helps customers feel satisfied with their experience. Well, the idea of customer satisfaction, I can't really look at a inventory shelf and say, "Hey, I want 3 units of customer satisfaction." Really, a construct is really, a belief that people have in their heads about a particular thing or a person or an experience. And our hypotheses are sort of the evidentiary tools that we use in order to test and see if that construct exists and how people think about that construct. So, another example that I like to use is I know we've only got a couple of minutes here, um, is the notion of love. You know, I heard there's a thing called Ring by Spring at Asbury. It's still baffling to me, but it's just an interesting um, idea that seems to float out there. But be that as it may, if someone said, "Hey, I can tell you're in love, and I'm going to take your brain and I'm going to look at it under, some kind of MRI, and it'll tell me whether you're in love or not," right? I don't think we really got that examination that would tell someone if they're in love or not. It's sort of like you either are or you aren't, and you know it or you don't know it. And so that's sort of the idea of a construct. And so we might say, again, in the case of love, do you get butterflies when you see this person that you really like, right? Butterflies in your stomach. I'm grasping here, right? But the idea is um, we need to have some we need to ask some questions that will help us sort of understand, is that construct true or not true, or does it exist or not exist? Um, in the case of Jennifer, what we could say is um, there is an attitude that exists, or let me say it this way. Is there an attitude or a belief among high school seniors that they will go to college and they will find meaning for their life? Okay. Obviously, we have Christ, so that uh, because we have Him, by definition, I would say we have meaning. But even if we take it into sort of the secular realm, that would be an interesting question for us to ask high school seniors. Do you expect that at the end of your college experience, you will have a defined I idea or goal of what you are going to do for your professional work life? Okay, that would be an idea of a construct, like a belief system or an attitude. Okay. Well, I think we are at 9:50. So, um, two things before we sign off. Number one, please look at the rest of these slides. Obviously, these are a reflection of what's in the textbook. So you need to read both the slides and the textbook. And then number two, begin reading our um, first article, our first Harvard Business Review article, right? So do that, um, and I will see you on Wednesday, hopefully in person. All right. Have a great day. Thank you.